Time for the best Fridays in football. The season winding down. Can it be week 11 already, Coach Meyer?
It sure is. Kind of a slow week this week. Obviously, you got the Wolverine saga with Jim Harbaugh, and a big one next weekend. And,
Yeah.
I think the SEC guys are playing that one off week where I think Alabama's playing Chattanooga or something like that. So it's
Yeah.
that time of year.
Yeah. It's Florida's got Missouri, which is not a big game anywhere else except Missouri, and given what they're dealing with. But back to Jim Harbaugh for a second. What a bizarre year. He now has officially accepted the suspension, which means that now they can avoid the court and legalities of him having to testify, which I'm sure he doesn't want to on other matters. What just overall, I know it's bizarre. What do you make out of that whole thing?
Well, I was very cautious early on because, as
Mm-hmm.
you know, half the time the media they report something and it was so bizarre that I actually didn't believe it. That a guy would go to games or set up tickets at 30 different schools and they would videotape from sunglasses that he was actually on the sideline of a Central Michigan game. That it's stuff that is so bizarre that I actually thought there's no way that someone would be so brazen and do something like that. But this accepting a punishment is confirmation that it did happen. Um, I don't know much more. I've heard so much, and quite honestly, buddy, everything I've heard has come true. So
Yeah.
the sources I have, but I'm not a reporter. I don't want to be a reporter. I like talking more about the impact on the team
Yeah.
and the game. But the reality is if this is all true, then this is, and it sounds like how do you accept that punishment and not? How about this? He's not coaching in the rivalry game,
Yeah.
Yeah.
and that when I heard that, I was like, wait a minute now. That
That's
they're
weird.
they had attorneys lined up ready to go to war for that one. And I mean, if I would have bet a lot of money that he would have been coaching in that game and they would have got an injunction. But there must be some pretty damning stuff there.
Got to be. And by the way, speaking of which, we say coaching. He is coaching. He just won't be on the sideline. How does one coach? You had to go through that once in your career. You have an ability to communicate. How effective is that when you're not on the sideline?
Yeah, we did it on the Big Ten Network. Jerry DiNardo and I talked about that. When you're not the play caller, you kind of break it down into the obvious and not so obvious. The obvious is fourth down, go for two or kick it, and then the not so obvious for the viewer would be when you're backed up, you take a shot, a trick play, a fake field goal, a fake punt. Um, who's in the game at a certain time. Those are all the not so obvious decisions that a head coach is involved in. But as far as a game manager, whether to punt or go for it, kick a field goal, go for it, um, and go for two or kick field goals, those are the obvious ones.
Hmm.
And there has to be, it can't be by committee because the clock's ticking. So when the ball's laid down, you have to make a decision, and there's only one guy that can do that.
You hate to think it's on autopilot that are decisions to be made there live. We know you did because your emotions run it every second, naturally. We talked last week about special teams, how important it is to have special teams. You brought up the fact of in close games, special teams matter a lot more because the yardage there you can get. And we're seeing some people say, well, you don't really need to have a special teams coach, etc. You came back and said you think the head coach is the special teams coach. I'm wondering why they do it so many different ways. And I've yet to figure out exactly how Florida does its special teams.
Yeah, I think if I'm not mistaken, I think Coach Napier is the play caller on offense. So if he's a play
Yes.
caller, you can't also coach special teams. I know Ryan Day is a play caller at Ohio State, so you better have a strong one. However, you better be in those meetings. You better because a lot of the special teams work is motivation, inspiration, rewarding players because that's not something that people say. I want to run down on kickoff. No, you don't. It's miserable. I want to be on kickoff return. No, you don't. It's terrible. Those are jobs that people don't notice. You're not going to get your NIL money for being a left guard on punt. That's not the way the world works. However, if you have the right culture, those people understand your players. That's how you win.
Yeah.
And winning's more important than IL. Winning's more important than someone noticing you on TV or social media. And that's when you have that kind of culture. Yeah, that's when you start winning.
Yeah, and I don't want to get too deep in this because we could spend an hour on it. But I want to get to some things like other coaching situations that we've bizarre things have happened this weekend. Of course, some of the games, etc. But uh, when you coach like you coach hands on, it's noticeable, has an impact on the players. I've always said if a guy's an offensive coordinator, he needs to be in the huddle with the quarterback. I see teams who have offensive coordinators are nowhere near the quarterback in the huddle. That tells me that's just sort of a payroll deal. You give the guy more money because you call him offensive coordinator. I'm not sure the culture is the same everywhere else. You were involved, however, in offense quite a bit. Someone said, well, Urban didn't get involved in play calling. I said, yes, he did, because I heard it on the headphones. The year I was working on the book there was on the headphones. You and Dan were talking back and forth. You got very involved with the play calling, although you weren't necessarily the play caller. Explain that.
Yeah, I was very much involved, especially in their early years. I probably called them the majority of plays. But Dan, as he got more experience, and plus he was great at it, and that allowed me to do the other things that I think head coaches have to do, whether it be, you know, motivating, inspiring the defense, very involved in special teams, and having your pulse of the entire team, not just the offense. So, yeah, very involved. The beautiful thing about Dan Mullen, how good he was, that we were together so long, is I would say something like, "Dan, take the shot," or he would always hustle, say something to me, "Coach, what do you think about this?" And the great story is the national championship game when the final drive against Oklahoma. Excuse me. When on third down we run the shovel pass, and then as we are getting the line up, I think it was second down. He said, "What do you think of the jump pass here?"
Hmm.
And I mean, I remember it like it was
Oh,
yesterday.
yeah.
That
Yeah.
was game, set, match against Oklahoma. But that's the kind of communication you have as far as play calling.
Timing is everything, isn't it? For sure. That's
And
interesting.
coach, how much are you affected by a player who runs off and says, this guy, I'm open, I see this or I see that.
Depends who that
Y-
player is.
yeah.
If that's a Lewis Murphy who is really knows the game as well as we do, I'm all in. And there's other players he's open every time, and then you go back and watch a videotape, he's never open. So I would usually sit that player down and say that's good on the I'm open. But I always love the players that want the ball too. There's some people give me the damn ball, and I would tell the players that in a meeting. That now you have to earn that right to say that, and you earn that right on Tuesday and Wednesday practice. Don't you dare say a word during the course of the game if you're a clown during practice. But if you're a monster, if you're Percy Harvin or Murphy or some of those guys that we had, are you kidding me? Come tell me you want the ball, and then I say up the stairs to Dan, I say, let's get so and so the ball because here's what he sees. So there's nothing like that. When you have players like that are involved, want the ball, and understand the game, that's the best part of coaching on during game day.
Two things, Urban. One on you mentioned Dan, and then his comments about the Mississippi State job. There's speculation about whether he would or would not go. But his quote was, "As I would say, you never say never when those things go on. I haven't spoken to anyone administratively at Mississippi State. I've talked to all kinds of fans and friends and people we love in Mississippi, and you see all over the place. You never say never going back. What do you think Dan's going to do?"
I don't know. Dan and I talk once in a while, and I know he's very happy doing what he's doing as far as his family. And, he's still got younger kids. That's the thing
Yeah.
my kids are all have kids. And here's Dan still with kids in high school and I think even junior high. So I don't know. I think Dan's awful young to just hang it up. That's how much respect I have for him. I was shocked when he didn't get it going. He did get it going. I was shocked when, I mean, not a year removed from, I want to say, an SEC spot in the SEC game, and then things started going south for him. So I think he's a great coach. I think he's too young to stop. I hope he goes. I shouldn't say that. I hope he does what's best for him.
Hmm. It's really hard to understand what happened there. Nobody seems to understand how it collapsed like it did without speculating. There was that situation on recruiting violation that was kind of quiet. And then suddenly everything started changing and the culture changed and the players changed, which gets me back to what we're dealing with today. Team building. You were very good at team. You were great at team building, Urban. And when you build a team, you have to have some kind of guidelines and regulation. NIL has thrown that out of kilter. I say there's still kids who want hard coaching, who still want to go to a university because it's so high, the Ohio State or University of Florida, who value certain things. And yeah, I get that money plays a factor. I argue all the time with one of my friends that it's not just about money. He says, yes, it is just about money. Who's right, Coach?
That's a great question. I've heard both sides of it. I was very successful. I want to use the guy's name, but one of the top basketball coaches in the country. I was talking to him, and we started talking about NIL, and is that really hard? He says, Coach, it's the opposite. He said, you remember the days where you have to recruit a player for 2 to 3 years and get to know his family and get to know his aunts and uncles and, spend all this time like we did? He goes, you don't do that anymore. You simply find out what it's cost to get him and you pay it. And I was like, I looked at him, I go, really? And he said,
wow.
He goes, yeah, I don't. He goes, we get players I just meet. If I want that player, what's the going rate? And we either match it, we beat it, or we don't recruit him anymore.
Wow.
It's really simple. And I go, yeah. He goes, remember all those days on the phone and all the days?
Yeah.
I mean, you remember that, buddy. I mean,
Yeah.
Tim Tebow too. I mean, I could give you story after story of recruiting stories where I recruited that player for 3 years, every day. And he said, you don't do that anymore. You just simply, what's it cost and you pay it. And I'm not saying that happens to every recruit, but when this guy told me that, I was like, okay.
Urban, it's tempting. It's just that easy. You may have to go back to coaching. That's time in your life you'll get back. Your whole life would change.
That's exactly what I want to do, is getting bidding wars on
Yeah,
15-year-old
sure.
players. Yeah, that's
I'm
exactly
sure.
what I want to do.
That's your favorite, right?
Yeah.
A
So,
nice
Brenden,
17-year-old player and getting a bidding war. Yeah, I can't wait to do that.
you handle that well, I'm sure. Brenden, I want to know how in the world what happened to Jimbo Fisher happened to Jimbo Fisher in your life. Did you ever think? I know you didn't. That someone would get paid $77 million not to coach?
No, but that's it's market value. People pay it, I guess, and that's his right. He obviously, when you say he earned it, he did because someone paid it. So yeah, I never thought of that. Do I think that's right? I don't know. It's none of my business.
It is your business. Actually, it's what you do. But the fact is, it's what it is today. And you're right. That is the situation today. Then we have Zach Arnett. Guy didn't even get the chance to finish the season, Urban.
Wow. Yeah, I don't know much about that situation. I know Mike Leach was a dear friend, and Mississippi State's got a lot of pride. They have had good seasons under Dan and under Mike. So buddy, I've not even really studied that or know what's going on there.
Yeah, I see that. I saw a story today that the University of Mississippi State agreed to match the next donors agreed to match the next $1 million they raise. So it's all about raising the money, what have you, et cetera, et cetera. Brenden, you got one. If you don't, I'll go and ask Coach a couple.
Well, I just wanted to sort of switch gears and talking Florida. Defensively, they've seemed to obviously struggle. It's pretty obvious, especially against LSU, and obviously an incredible quarterback there. A lot of talk of coaching wise about defensive coordinator. And I go back to a couple of weeks ago when you were talking about how you hired a defensive coordinator and how you went, basically, I'm paraphrasing, you found the OG on the block and you paid him a little extra money. How much does experience matter in that position as a coach? Even though you got a young, smart guy that knows the game, whatever, may have some experience, but how much does that experience matter defensively? I just, sort of expand on that, what you talked about a couple of weeks ago.
Sure. I'm an offensive. I was an offensive coach and special teams, so I would go to hire, like Buddy said, the best that's on the street block, and I wanted guys. It worked out. I didn't plan on this, but Bowling Green, Utah, Florida, and Ohio State, I actually retained the defense coordinators at each school. And the reason I did is because they were good at what they did. At Florida was Charlie Strong, and I brought in Greg Madison as a co-DC, who I worked with at Notre Dame and paid him a lot of money, and said, "Now here's what I expected to look like, but you guys are the experts." And so experience, and then also experience in the conference. I found out when I kept Kyle Whittingham, it was one of the best coaching decisions I've ever made, and it was because they were good on defense. But I'm going uncharted waters. I'm moving a bunch of offensive coaches from Northwest Ohio to Salt Lake City. I don't, other than beautiful mountains, I don't know what the hell I'm doing out there. And here's a guy that has great experience. So it worked out perfectly. Same thing with Ohio State. I retained a guy named Luke Fickle, one of the best decisions I made. He knew the Big Ten. He knew Ohio State. I thought I knew the Big Ten. You don't know it because you're so far removed. So it worked out perfect. Experience is critical. To me, your defensive coordinator, if you're an offensive coach, that better be the best coach on your staff.
Is it that they just know hey, in this moment, at this time, it seems like a different animal than offense as a coach, that experience matters. Is it much different than it is on offense, defensively calling that?
No, it's you're just trying to stop people. On offense, you're trying to move the ball. So no, it's experience is critical on both sides of the ball, especially when you get to the higher levels of the game. I used to say I want that weathered, scarred up coach on my staff that's been through it all, especially in those positions. And you look, that's kind of what I did. I took a little chance on Dan Mullen. He was a young, but I would have never done that on defense because I'm not there. On offense, I was there every snap of the way with Danny when we first got there in '05, and that was first time coordinator, and he earned the right, and I knew we were going to work together. There was no chance there'd be something on that game plan that I was not aware of, or there was no chance a play would be called that I was not aware of. Certainly early on. Now, as he got going, obviously he became great at his job.
Well, you raised him out of the cradle. I remember the great story you told me when he was a GA at Notre Dame, when he was helping you set the cones. You see, just want to say, "Shut up, Dan," and set the cones. He was yappy, wasn't
He's always challenged. He's always fighting me on everything. I said, "Dan, shut up and set up the cone."
he? Urban, what do you do when things start going sideways? I mean, there's all kind of things you've done. It. You stopped the plane on the tarmac. You've had team meetings. You've done all kind of things. And I think about Billy Napier now. By all accounts, a really good guy, decent coach, but things are starting to go sideways on him now because so much is invested in the 2024 class with DJ Lagway, this great five-star quarterback, looks like he's going to be the real deal. And they got the number 3 ranked class in the country. They've just lost 3 recruits, 3 other prize recruits. It's not going to stop there. It's going to keep going. I was at the Gainesville Quarterback Club where you spoke a few weeks ago, and I was there with you then. And I spoke to them about do you love the Florida Gators? Do you love them at 5-5? Because it's going to be a tough go for Gator fans when they start peeling off these commitments and they start losing players. It's going to be hard to stop. How do you stop the bleeding, and what do you do?
Well, it's hard, and I feel for Coach Napier and that staff. And like I said, living in that city, living in Gainesville, I mean, there are Gators everywhere. I mean, you can't go. Shelly would say, "Let's go to dinner." I'm like, "No, I'm not going to dinner. Let's go do something." I'm like, "No, I'm not." So I got the lake house out in Melrose. It's just really hard. When you get a second to yourself, that's probably the reason I didn't last long. I never really took seconds for myself. So I think, buddy, you got to shock the system once in a while, whether it be a tarmac meeting, whether it be kick them out of the locker room. We did that, by changing your practice schedule from a Sunday to a Monday. You just can't let the thing keep bleeding, if that makes sense. And
Makes a lot of sense.
it's the psychiatrist or the psychology of it that when something's just going along, that's if it's great, you still got to shock the system once in a while because I can't remember the theory, but it's proven that when you change brings on production. Stale, nothing's good when it's stale. All of a sudden, you're just going on, and this is our routine. Well, if the routine's not working, change it. And change it, shock the system. What's that mean? I don't know. I mean, change. I've done a million things. Our players, I was talking, I think, Lewis Murphy the other day. And, he said, yeah, we lost a game, and I changed everything that next week. Changed practice. I went from Sunday off to Monday off. I went from, full pads to this, to this, to this. And it just made everybody reconnect and refocus because whatever was going wasn't working so well.
So true. And I think fans want to see that the coach is reacting. He's addressing issues. When you say, well, we'll fix that and move on, that's not good enough. And I think the players feel the same way, in my opinion. They respond to it, and they did with you. It's proven there. Let's talk about a couple of coaches, prospects. The name Mike Elko coming up a lot, including the one at Texas A&M. I really like what he did. He's done at Duke. He's a guy that might be an up and comer. He's a name we're hearing about A&M. What do you think of him? I know, are there any names that you're hearing or reading, like the rest of us, about the A&M job?
Yeah, Mike Elko's a great name. I don't know him that well. I think I met him, but I don't know him. There's people on Fox Big Noon that either played with him, know him. I hear nothing but incredible things about it. To win what he's doing at Duke is fantastic. I love Lance Leipold at Kansas.
Yeah.
I think I spent time with him, and I'm telling you, that guy is an excellent coach.
What does he do so good, Urban? What does Lance Leipold do that's so good?
Well, he's got a system. He's got the same coordinators he's brought with him. He's won at every level. Guys that win at every level. He was a 5-time national champion, I believe, at Wisconsin lacrosse. And then he went to Buffalo. You can't win at Buffalo. And he did. I'm just saying that, but of course you can. And then you have Kleinman at Kansas State. I don't know him at all, but I have so much respect for him. That's a extremely well coached team. And then the guy that I really got respect for is Dan Lanning out at Oregon.
Yeah.
I got to hold on to him. I talked to him last week, and Spence, I don't know him, but he just, when this is really interesting. I know we're going to run out of time. When I would go sit in the defensive meeting room, and I'd ask the defense coaches what bothers them. What's the worst thing they have to defend? And then I walk right across the hallway to the offense. We put that in. Because I wanted that team that we were going to play to be in constant stress, duress, and conflict the entire game. And if you saw our teams play when we were really good, we were doing empty and doing all kinds of motions and doing whatever. And that was all because the defense coaches said it drove them nuts. And then I'd ask Dan Mullen what was the biggest problems we were receiving. I'd walk to the defense room and we put it in. And I watch Oregon play. They're the number one staff in the country as far as doing that. They cause conflict every snap, offensively and defensively. So I think he's one of the best out there right now.
Interesting. You love the shock system anyway, including on your call sheet, where in those certain situations, particularly in postseason, where you love to come up with a play that people aren't expecting. We know about the fake punts, etc. And the little notation on the bottom to yourself, let the MFer go. In other words, that was advice from another coach that gave you, but do something that's not expected. That is the sort of art of war or football, whatever. Do something unexpected. How did you get that? Is something you inherited, invented? Where'd you get it from?
I don't know. I've been asked that, and you know what's happened? Shelley noticed as I got older, I would not do as many, shock the system things during the course of the game. I remember when we're getting ready to play Ohio State in 2006, and we're in a hotel room in Phoenix, Arizona, watching Boise State beat Oklahoma. And she started nudging me, saying, I'm staring at my game plan and all that. And she's going, why don't we do, we got to run more trick plays like this, because we used to do that all the time. And if you remember the SEC championship in 06, when we beat Arkansas, fake punt and then that reverse pass to Tate Casey on the sideline. So, the better players you got, which I started getting, not good players, great players, I would do less and less of that because I just give it to Zeke Elliott one more time or throw it to Mike Thomas or give it to Percy Harvin. Why do a trick play when you have Tebow and Percy? Just let those two guys do what God gave them the ability to do. So Those are great questions. Sometimes coaches screw it up because they try too much with that kind of stuff.
Coach, how do you how you change that psychology when a team or players don't feel like they can win? You know, where you get the sense sometimes that, hey, we can't stop. The defense says we can't stop these guys, or we can't. Is it a trick play? Is it a tarmac meeting? Like what do you do to change that psychology? Because that's what fascinates me about coaching is the psychology of it.
Yeah, there's three types of teams, and Lou Holtz used to say this all to me all the time: overconfident, underconfident, and right about where you want them. And if it's overconfident, you got to push them down a little bit. You got to. That's when practices would become unmerciful, right? Just I do stuff to bring them down on the ground, and we've had that. We had that in 2009 at Florida, and then you have the 2016 that really did not believe we could beat Ohio State. For 30 days, they were told how bad they were, how they didn't belong. And so we thought of different ways to elevate them. And there's no greater way than showing the videotape and saying, wait a minute, we are good enough. Here, look, you're playing against, you're playing Alabama, you're playing Florida State, you're playing this, and they're playing, Ohio State's schedule wasn't close to ours that year. And so as we led up to game time, that was something that we had to elevate our players and our staff that we can do this, and you got to be creative on how you do it. That, I when I get fired up when I talk to you guys because that's what I miss right there.
Hmm.
That's I would stay awake at night, middle of the night. I come up with ideas. How do you elevate a team and make them think they can do the unthinkable?
Would you rather be favored or the underdog? Would you rather what? Because there's psychology in there too, right?
Sure, sure. Favorite's hard, but I always want to be favored because that means I got great players. But the underdog role was that was thrilling. I mean, I look back now and all these memories are popping through my brain right now about the team meetings and ways to elevate people to do what you never thought you could do. And then when it's over, I'm telling you, that's of the rewards you get from coaching. That's number one.
Well, you answered my next question. What's the most fun in coaching? You just sort of said that. And here's the thing I want to close on with Florida right now. Florida fans have seen us go from realizing a dream, finally, 1996, they finally won a national championship, how great it was. And of course, you want to live your dreams. And now we go to expectations with you. Steve got to live the dream. You had to live with the expectations. I know which one's harder, but you've been fortunate to be able to go in and change things successfully everywhere you've been. But my gosh, you talked about having to deal with Spurrier and the expectations he brought. How hard is that for a coach to follow somebody like that and try to win and try to do something different?
It's borderline impossible, but you have Lincoln Riley did it at Oklahoma. Ryan Day's doing it at Ohio State. It's really hard though. I've never really had to do that. I've kind of taken over things that needed to get blown up a little bit. Bowling Green, they were 2-9. Utah was 5-7, I believe. Florida was, I think they were 7-5. They did some good things, but they had good players. And then Ohio State went 6-7. So we came in and changed stuff. I think it's more difficult when you take over something that they've been really good at. I think Luke Fickell's dealing with that right now in Wisconsin. You want to change everything, but there's a lot of people in that building that say, well, this is the way we used to do it. And it worked. And that's a problem.
Urban, you're at Maryland. Final question: what can we look forward to on Big Noon show, big popular show with you and the guys? What are you focusing on Saturday at Big Noon?
Well, it's a Harbaugh story and the Wolverines. Obviously, they're a great football team, great players. Uh, this is unprecedented what's going on, and so I imagine that's why we're here. I know that's why we're here. Maryland's really struggled. They started off 5-0. I want to say they lost 4 of the last 5, so they're really struggling. I don't expect a huge crowd and all that. So it's not one of those games. But this is the storyline of college football right now is unprecedented second suspension of the year, and the reality that there might be even more down the road. Because when the Big Ten says they're not, the NCAA is not. So.
And yet we still have to find something to celebrate about the great game of college football, which you do every Friday here with Urban Meyer. So appreciative of your time and doing this show. Enjoy it. Love to see you smiling. Someone said the other day, said, I didn't have to ask Urban if he was happy. I saw his face and saw him smiling. So I think that speaks to everything people want to know. Glad you're doing so well. Wish the best to you and Shelly, and we'll talk to you again. I guess we'll do a show next Friday, right? We have Thanksgiving, right?
Sure. Oh,
That's I don't feel like we're doing a show anymore. I just feel like I'm just sitting around and get to talk football. It's probably that's my favorite time of the week. So thanks, Coach.
Talking football with Uncle Urban. Appreciate it, Coach. Great talking to you. Have a good week.
Thanks, Coach.
Happy Thanksgiving to you.
Well, there he is, Dad, Coach Urban Meyer. Just always a pleasure to talk to him. We want to remind everybody, if you're watching this show down here, click the subscribe button, smash it. You get this good stuff almost every week or whenever he's available. Make sure you check out GatorbaitMedia.com. My God, we got more stories pumping out of there right now with Lauren Meadows, Franz Beard, Buddy Martin, the cast of thousands. Really awesome. Check out all that covering women's basketball, men's basketball, football game. A couple guys are going to be at the game. So if you're not there, you're missing out. And we appreciate you watching. All right, Bedro, love you.
And, love you, son. Have a good week. I'll talk to you at Thanksgiving or a couple of days.
Yep, a couple of days. Talk to you, everybody. Have a good day, everyone.